Field Vision Sports presents The Matchup with Sasha Bushka.
Kyler Murray kind of looks like a little kid running from his parents when he scrambles in the pocket.
Scott Bushka.
I had to tell my daughter that today wasn't really about her first day of school. It was really about me and the launch of our company.
And Cody Alexander.
Randomly, no. As somebody who's been around football my entire life, I literally can say that I've never smelled smelling salts, nor have I ever seen anybody actually have smelling salts. I'm sure that they were used at some point.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome into the matchup by Field Vision Sports. Excited to have you with us as always. It is Super Bowl week. It is the biggest week on the football calendar. I'm your host, Sasha Bushka, joined by head of football operations, Cody Alexander, and the Lamar Hunt of Field Vision Sports, Scott Bushka. Fellas, how we feeling today?
Doing great.
Lamar Hunt's a legend. His name's on the AFC Championship trophy. Why would I not take
doing
that?
a little research. Lamar Hunt coined the name Super Bowl. So I figure, like, if we can give Scott credit for doing anything with Field Vision, it's naming it. So we'll go in that direction for this week. But it's a big week, fellas, no doubt.
What's the like? If we say Super Bowl on this podcast, which we already have, like, do we get sued by the NFL? Or like how does this work? I'm still unclear about this.
It's a really good question. I think we're just gonna roll the dice. We're just gonna roll the dice on this.
It seems to me in all my conversations with lawyers that, like, the term Super Bowl should be pretty hard to trademark or copyright. Like, they're just two normal words put together. But I don't know. Like, seems like the NFL is so all powerful that they've somehow scared everyone off from even saying Super Bowl.
You've already said it like 4 times.
I know. They can.
All
I hope the NFL doesn't come after all of our.
Now you've got me scared. The big games this weekend. On a scale of 1 to 10, Cody, how excited do you get just in general when the big game's coming up? And then I'll ask you specifically about this game.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's a whole deal. You know, it's almost like a holiday, right? So it's kind of like the last little bit of the holiday season is kind of how the Super Bowl is. That's kind of the end of the holiday season, at least the way I've done it. So everybody gets together, kids get all crazy. We get together with family. So I've always get excited when it's Super Bowl time.
We talked about, like, way back, it seems like a long time ago now because it was like 6 months ago, like what happens in the Alexander household when football season starts. I'm wondering if there's, like, the Monday after this game, like this upcoming Monday, is there like a funeral procession and like a burial for the 2024 season, and like everybody pays their respects and grieve for a few weeks before they
get for about a month
season.
Yeah, until about March, I had to explain to my 6-year-old that the logos on the TV are not for football games; they're now for basketball games, and so he gets very confused as to why is that? Why do you mean that there's no football on TV?
Dude, I like Bo. Am legit sad. Like, I feel like we have been so invested in this football season and spent so much time thinking about it and talking about it. Like, I am 100% certain that I'm going to wake up Monday morning with some type of depression and find myself kind of just like walking aimlessly around the house at nights when there used to be a football game on, like looking for another dish to clean.
Nevertheless, we'll stay busy here at Field Vision in the off season. I have no doubt about that, and already some great things coming down the pike as you listeners might have seen or heard throughout the day, yesterday or today. So we'll just leave that hanging there. You guys know what's going on. You can go look it up at fieldvisionsports.com if you want. Little website revamp there as well. But let's dive into the big game. Eagles Chiefs, Mahomes Hurts, Saquon Barkley versus whoever the Chiefs decide to hand the ball to this game. Steve Spagnuolo versus Kellen Moore, Vic Fangio versus Andy Reid. It's almost like Matt Nagy doesn't even exist.
Right.
What coaching matchup, like counterparts, are you looking forward to the most in this one, Cody?
Yeah, I'm really excited to watch Spags figure out the run fits, figure out the run game, and really make Hurts, win the game by playing drop back quarterback. I think that to me is, I know everybody's focused on Vic Fangio and Andy Reid, but to me, figuring out the run game, that's the piece I'm really excited to figure out what Spags has up his sleeve.
Scott, do you have a coaching matchup that intrigues you?
I mean, Cody alluded to it, but the primetime matchup is Reed versus Fangio.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, you've got obviously an all-timer in Reed going up against Fangio and a defense. I put out the EPA per play chart, but like, quite frankly, a defense that has been dominant all year. And by any measure you want to put it, the number one defense in the league. So I think that's the most premium matchup. I agree with Cody that I think this game might come down to Steve Spagnuolo and what he's able to force the Eagles into. And then when he forces the Eagles into that, can Jalen Hurts respond?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got kind of two personnel matchups to look at. We have when the Chiefs have the ball and when the Eagles have the ball. Given what we talked about there, let's start with the Eagles with the ball against the Chiefs defense and what Spagnuolo is going to do against Saquon. I keep hearing that the Eagles have the best offensive line in football, but the Bills had a pretty damn good offensive line as well. And Chris Jones just kind of went up and down his line, picked his matchup, and was able to move people on that line. Do the Eagles have a better matchup for Chris Jones than the Bills did?
Well, I think overall the line as a whole is probably the best as a whole. I think Chris Jones is one of those. Just he's a phenomenal player. I think the biggest thing this year, and we've talked about this before, is the fact that he's willing to play the run this year. And that's completely changed. He is a every down player now, not just on passing downs. And that's going to be the difficulty. And they're going to have to figure out ways, whether it's trapping him, whether it's running away from him, they're going to have to figure out ways to handle him.
You think Chris Jones read our offseason havoc rating analysis of his run defense?
Right. Is it abysmally bad? The problem is that he's so good rushing the passer that it offsets all the negative on the run side. And then you have this year where he's been good in both sides. He's running to the ball. It's noticeable that playing the run is something that was probably talked to him about this offseason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Sasha had the right point, though, in that Chris Jones is great, but you got Charles Omenihu, you got Treshaun Wharton, George Karlaftis, who's been playing like a maniac.
Mm-hmm.
No one likes to talk about Mike Pennell,
Right.
but Mike Pennell last year, if anyone remembers, we're having the same conversation going into the Super Bowl against Christian McCaffrey and that 49ers offense, and Mike Pennell had several one-on-one big run stuffs in that game. And is back again. I remember at the time everyone being like, whoa, where did this come from? Like, how is Mike Pennell making plays? Like, the Chiefs have more than Chris Jones that can make plays on that defensive line. And Spagnuolo is going to have a game plan for stopping Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you alluded to it, but like the Chiefs have a really good rotation on the edges. You mentioned Omenihu and Karlaftis. They also have Mike Dana. Felix Anudike-Uzomah has made some plays as of late. You'll remember around the trade deadline, everyone made a big deal out of the fact that the Chiefs went out and got Josh Uche because like another edge player to help him. He wasn't even active against the Bills and probably won't be active for the Super Bowl either. And so they have depth across the line to complement what Chris Jones gives you. And I think that's going to be a big key in them holding up against Saquon. Is there a world Eagles offensively where Saquon doesn't have a huge day, but the Eagles are still able to move the ball and be effective against the Chiefs defense?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to the slot. And can you Devontae Smith in the middle of the field? And two, don't look, man. AJ Brown is a beast. And look, we love Trent McDuffie here at Field Vision. I know you guys do because he's a Chiefs, but him being an outside corner, he's not really an elite outside guy. He's a great corner all around, one of the better corners in the NFL. But in terms of can he match up with AJ Brown day in and day out, I don't know if they're going to even travel him. I don't think that's something. Jalen Watson coming back does make it really difficult for the Eagles to move him around. But if they can manufacture a way to get him in the slot, Devontae Smith in the slot, those are going to be some things that, look, if they end up getting a couple of long bombs, which the Eagles like to throw, that could be something that the Chiefs struggle with.
Yeah, the question is whether or not the Chiefs are comfortable playing Jalen Watson and Josh Williams outside against, for example, an AJ Brown, so that you can have McDuffie go into the slot and match up against the Devontae Smith. Because I was just thinking back, Cody, to your point about McDuffie in the slot. Like I was thinking back to one of his best games of the year, which is against Jamar Chase, where he really flustered him, and that's someone who lines up in the slot a lot. The other thing I was thinking about, Sasha, is it feels like the Eagles have to be successful in putting the Chiefs linebackers in conflict, run versus pass, right? Like I see the RPO pass game being a big part of what the Eagles try to do. And as good as Nick Bolton and sometimes Drew Tranquil are against the run, I think they struggle against the pass. So if they can suck them up into the line of scrimmage, which they almost certainly will be able to do because of the threat of their run game, and Jalen Hurts can like play catch and RPO game behind them, I think that's the way you see the Eagles move the ball.
Yeah, I agree.
To follow up on that, Cody, what traditionally Spagnuolo, when he sees like an RPO attack, what is his usual way of trying to defend that?
Well, I mean, he's been able to either play man or but we've kind of talked about Eagles are kind of one of those teams that they get you out of playing man, but it's essentially just anchoring people in these zones around there. This could be one of those where we see a lot of weak rotation cover 3, which can then turn into a bunch of different things. So essentially they're going to drop read opposite whoever's at nickel, and then they can get into almost all of they can get into tamper rotations. They can stay in it. They're just going to flood that window right there, put an extra hat near the box, but also kind of cut you in an area and with proximity, put somebody in an area where they know that they're going to target for an RPO window.
It's interesting your point about man and what, as we know, the Super Bowl last year turned on the Chiefs playing a shitload of man against the 49ers in the second half. I personally don't think the Chiefs are going to be shy about doing that if they feel like it will help them defend the RPO game and help them defend the run game. Like you certainly risk getting beat by AJ Brown and getting beat by Devontae Smith, but it's not that much different last year than having Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk on the outside. So I could see that being a place that Spags goes.
Well, and to your point with that, I mean, we could even go back to the Dolphins games in the playoff last year where, look, the Chiefs will play a double bracket. They are not afraid to sit there and put two. If your engine runs through 2 receivers like the Dolphins do with Waddle and Hill, we are going to press them. We're going to make it hard for them to get off. And then we're going to have safeties right on top of them. And look, that's where I think your point with the linebackers, Kellen Moore is going to have to throw to the running back. I know he doesn't want to. He doesn't do it very often. But what could make it a very difficult day for the Chiefs is if they find a way to get Saquon in as a pass catcher and not just in screens and dump offs, but actually get him in the route tree. That could spell disaster for the Chiefs.
Yeah, that'll be something interesting to watch because I mean, even coming into this year, we've always known that Saquon Barkley has pass catching in his arsenal, and we talked about it in some of the early games. Do we take his over in receiving yards? But it's just Kellen Moore doesn't do it very often, and they dabbled in it a little bit early in the year, but like as the season's progressed, he's done pretty much all of his damage on the ground.
I mean, I'm convinced that the Chiefs' weakest link on defense. Now that Jalen Watson's back, the Chiefs' weakest link on defense is the speed of their linebackers.
Mm.
Yeah, and obviously this is something that they dealt with all season, but a guy like Willie Gay not being there, he was the guy who did a lot of the spying and helped against RPO type action in the past for them. So obviously they've had a full season to figure out how to play without him, but it could be something that shows up in this game. One thing that's interesting about this matchup as well, before we get into the Chiefs O versus the Eagles D, the Chiefs have 0 takeaways so far in the playoffs, and the Eagles are plus 10 in turnover margin so far in the playoffs. So what's interesting about that is I think the stat is over the last three seasons, it's either 2 or 3 seasons, the Chiefs are 34-1. I think it's during this whole three-peat run. They're 34-1 when they tie or win the turnover margin. So basically, as long as they don't lose the turnover margin, they never get beat. The one thing Jalen Hurts has done a really good job of this year, and the reason the Eagles went from 2-2 to now in the Super Bowl, and is after their bye, he just completely stopped turning the ball over. Is Spags going to try to devise some sort of way to force a turnover in this game on Jalen Hurts? Is he going to add some different pressures? Do you think Jalen Hurts makes a mistake in this game at some point?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think he's going to have to do some, and it will probably be through some sort of a 5-man pressure, get him off of his point, get him moving, and then forcing him to put the ball in a risky spot, and then obviously the Chiefs are going to have to capitalize on that. But it's all about winning early downs, getting him off schedule, and then manufacturing those on third down.
Yeah, I was gonna say it all depends on game script. Not only Cody, to your point, winning early downs, but also not getting the Eagles in a position where they're up 2 scores and they can run the ball, and Hurts doesn't have to take chances. Because the reality of what changed, like Hurts stopped turning the ball over, he also stopped taking chances. And that's why their passing game ground to a halt, and you got AJ Brown reading books on the sideline. I'm like,
they basically came to the conclusion that we will win more by having no passing game, but just not having mistakes, than we would if we had a more explosive offense, but there's 1 or 2 mistakes a game that work against us.
Right. And so you have to. So will Jalen Hurts turn the ball over? He absolutely can. You have to put some game pressure on him, right? You got to get him. You got to get him outside of just being able to hand the ball off on 1st and 2nd down. You're in 3rd and 4, and you can run it again because you got the tush push on 4th and 1, right? And so if anyone can put some game pressure on him, you would think it's Mahomes and the Chiefs, but you would like to see the Chiefs not get down by 10 like they have done in all 4 of their previous Mahomes Super Bowls.
Yeah, one of the things too about Hurts turnovers is when you think of quarterback turnovers, you mostly think about interceptions, but when he is turning the ball over, it's almost as much fumbles as it is interceptions. So can the Chiefs heat him up, get him in some pocket situations, and force some fumbles on sacks? And it'll come down to like how many times does he have to drop back in obvious passing situations?
Yeah, and Hurts has actually been relatively poor on sack avoidance. And like he's much more, he is not Mahomes and Josh Allen when it comes to like evading pressure. He's much more likely to see pressure and just go down and take a 10, 15-yard loss. So I think that's what the Chiefs are going to have to force him into.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out on the Eagles offensive side of the ball and the Chiefs defensive side of the ball. Flipping the script to the other side, I brought up the turnover battle. One thing about that stat is if the Chiefs are 34-1 if they tie or win the turnover battle. So as long as Mahomes doesn't give the ball up the other way, they're more likely than not to win. Mahomes has not thrown an interception, I don't believe, since the Bills game in the regular season. When he had 2, and he had a lot early in the year. I think he had 11 up to that point. Any chance that the Eagles defense creates some looks that maybe Mahomes isn't expecting that could cause him to throw them one in this game because they've been plus 10 throughout the playoffs, as I mentioned.
Well, one thing that I will say this year is that Vic Fangio in the playoffs ran some cover two, and that's something that is completely out of his wheelhouse. He just doesn't. I mean, there's probably in the past couple of years, I can probably count on both my hands how many times I've seen a true like Tampa or a cover two drop. So what that tells me is that he's changing and morphing even some of the stuff that he's doing this year. This isn't the Vic Fangio from the Broncos or what we saw with the Dolphins a little bit, where it's like classic looks, classic playbook looks. He's doing some different things. He's moving Zach Bond around. And to me, that's where it's going to come. I don't think he's going to do anything crazy coverage wise. I don't think he's going to, blitz Mahomes more than we typically have. I think he's going to use his hybrid personnel. He's going to move guys around, and he's going to make Mahomes second guess what he's seeing that way out of personnel usage and not necessarily what he's seeing post snap.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's been a lot of talk this week about how much better the Eagles defense is this time around than 2 years ago. It's actually made up. It's sort of like the Eagles defense was really good 2 years ago too. And if anything, they were probably more equipped to face the Chiefs because the Eagles defense 2 years ago had like the most sacks in 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not as good at pressuring the passer as they were that year. And the Chiefs managed to get out of that game relinquishing 0 sacks. Now, this time around, the Chiefs have played 4 different left tackles. They've now settled on their all-pro left guard as their left tackle, which brings in a different left guard. Going into like 2 weeks ago or 2 games ago when they were playing the Houston Texans in the divisional round, nobody knew who they were going to start at left tackle in that game. That was the big question mark because they hadn't played a meaningful game since Christmas, and DJ Humphries had gotten healthy again, so there was some question there. But they've gone with Joe Thuney there. So are the Eagles equipped to take advantage of the Chiefs' offensive line, or is Andy Reid just going to be too smart with how he protects the O-line and the quick passing game?
Yeah, his sorry, go ahead, Cody.
No, I was just going to say those 2 inside guys are going to be a problem. And if you're moving a left guard out to left tackle to handle it, you got to be careful of are you moving him out and then creating a problem inside because they've got 2 dominant guys inside that can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, that's the difference between 2 years ago is that this isn't as good of a Chiefs offensive line.
Right.
And that's primarily because the left guard and left tackle position because of the Chiefs moving Thuney out. And so the one thing, I mean, Cody brought this up. The one thing that worries you is the best player. Like, I'll be honest with you, Nolan Smith doesn't scare me. Like, if Joe Thuney gets beat, he usually gets beat by a bull rush, but he almost never gives up a quick pressure. Jalen Carter is who you want to worry about, and he's inside, likely playing against Mike Caliendo, who has been a below average left guard. So I halfway expected the Chiefs, us to find out at some point the Chiefs were going to move Thuney back inside and start Humphries. I definitely don't think they're going to do that because the offense has been clicking, but that's got to be. I don't know what else the solve is for it schematically.
Caliendo's done a well enough job of staying out of the limelight, which is kind of the whole goal when you're a new offensive lineman in there. Although I believe the sack that the Bills got to force the Chiefs into a field goal, which could have been a huge problem because then you give Josh Allen the ball back only down 3, came straight over Caliendo, straight up the middle in that into that Bills Chiefs game. So it hasn't been completely flawless inserting him in there for Thuney.
Yeah, well, probably the most game-wrecking play on defense is inside pressure because you just don't have enough time to react to it, and it's why Chris Jones has been such a valuable asset all these years because it's like that. I mean, we talked about it. The Rams, I thought for sure 3rd and 4, the Rams were going to beat the Eagles, right? Jalen Carter, well, it was actually just a missed blocking scheme, but Jalen Carter blows it up. and the game's over, essentially. So I just don't, like I said, I don't know. And Cody, I would be curious your point of view. Like, I don't know how the Chiefs scheme for that, because unlike left tackle, it's not like you can give them a ton of help.
Yeah, you really can't. And you can do some things in the run game, like you can trap them, you can wham block them, do some different things that way. But yeah, in the passing game, no. I mean, and because that's the other thing. If they're going to end up doubling Carter all night with the center, you're leaving one-on-ones across the board. And then you're also leaving yourself exposed to games. You're leaving yourself exposed to pressures. Now, Fangio's not a big pressure guy, but he can, and he's got plenty of them, especially ones that can attack the middle. So to me, that's going to be the question. If you have to constantly double or slide to Carter, you're setting yourself up for getting beat off of the defense understanding your protection and then giving a counter to it.
Yeah, the interesting thing with the Chiefs offense, if we get away from line play for a little bit and kind of look at the outside and the weapons and the glamour positions that people care about, the Chiefs have done it with a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors this year. I don't want to say smoke and mirrors, but it's more schemed up. How do we scheme someone open versus one of our guys is going to win on this route? Xavier Worthy has stepped up a lot in the playoffs, but other than that, it's been kind of pick your poison. Is it a DeAndre Hopkins game? Does Juju Smith-Schuster make a big play? Obviously, Travis Kelce's always there. Noah Gray, Justin Watson. You don't know which guy it's going to be, and generally it's each guy getting one or two catches at critical moments throughout the game. Is there any Chiefs skill position player outside of Travis Kelce? And I'll take Xavier Worthy off the table on this as well, Cody, that you could see kind of being a factor against this Eagles defense, as that's a guy that could make a big play in this game.
Well, I think Smith-Schuster made a couple of really critical plays against the Bills. And then, too, don't sleep on a veteran getting his first shot of playing a Super Bowl. I think DeAndre Hopkins still has a little bit of juice. I mean, this could be the end for him. So, I mean, I think this is one of those where, he gets matched up against Slay or he gets matched up against Quentin Mitchell and is able to make a couple of plays down the sideline. That really does some different things against the Eagles that, that's what Fangio wants you to throw in the middle of the field. That's where he's packing everybody in. So being able to win outside, I do think a guy like Schuster, though, being big, physical, being able to play against a Cooper DeJean and the nickel might be somebody that could have a big game.
Is this a vintage Travis Kelce game, Scott? Or does he largely disappear like he did against the Bills?
Cody, remind me of the Eagles are much heavier zone team than man team, correct?
Yes.
And what flavor of zone?
Basically, it's weak rotation cover 3. So they're spinning away from the nickel.
Yeah. I'm not sure I fully know how that affects Travis Kelce.
They
maybe
will have somebody on top of him almost every single time, and it'll be CJ Gardner-Johnson is who will be on top of him, and which he has been known at times to be a tight end killer. So that's going to be who's going to be there. They're going to have brackets around him a lot of the times too, which I know Kelce gets away from that, but Bills are kind of in the same mold, playing a lot of cover 3 zone. Kelce didn't have that big of a day. So it could be the same thing.
Did he start the Super Bowl? CJ Gardner-Johnson started the Super Bowl for the Eagles 2 years ago, right?
Yes, but they were running a predominantly cover 1 at that time under Gannon. Gannon was trying to play a bunch of cover 1. So even if you go back to then, that's not really a good game to watch, which is where we got Corn Dog. We got the famous Corn Dog.
I mean, my general take, Sasha, is I'm not sure it matters, which is a weird thing to say about the Chiefs, but I think that they have the worst case scenario for the Chiefs offense is that Kelce is not a threat that you have to account for, right? Because it like when he sucks attention from everyone else, like he did against the Bills last week, you've got Worthy, you've got Smith-Schuster, you've got Hopkins, you've got Hollywood Brown. You have a lot of different places Mahomes can go. Your worst case scenario, which is the start of this year, is no one's scared about Kelce, right? And so you don't have to assign that many resources to him, and he can't hurt you, which I don't think is the case. I have been pretty loud about the fact that getting Hollywood Brown, even though he hasn't caught a bunch of passes, getting Hollywood Brown back into this offense has made a huge difference. because it gives them a lot of playmakers that people have to account for. So if they're going to bracket Kelsey, put 2 over the top of him, I think Mahomes just goes elsewhere.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Cody, but it seems to me like Hollywood Brown has kind of taken over the routes that Xavier Worthy was running the deep routes, which he's better equipped to complete those plays than Xavier Worthy, I think, if they were to throw them. But then it's opened up Xavier Worthy to do a lot of other things underneath.
Well, yeah, he becomes the jet motion guy, the flat push guy, get the guy in space, his A dot's going to go down. So where he's getting that, if you actually look at it, Xavier Worthy, I was looking at it earlier. So when he entered the league, everybody thought, okay, here it is. It's a deep threat. This is the guy that they want. He's going to be running vertical. But what it's kind of ended up being is he's more of the space guy. Get him into space, make him do that. And having Hollywood Brown now as kind of that guy that can push vertical, allowing Worthy to be the kind of that underneath, find it in the zone, find the mismatch, be able to throw him and then let him just run, has really opened it up. Now, Hollywood's not getting the passes that you would hope that he'd be getting, but it's kind of one of those where you do your job, somebody's going to come open.
It's going to be a great game. I'm fired up.
It is. It's going to be.
There's going to be so many good matchups, and it's going to be close at the end. And then, obviously, you have like the fact that the Chiefs have won 17 straight one-score games probably scares a lot of people who think it's going to be close at the end. Like if you're of the opinion that okay, this is going to come down to a field goal, but you also think the Eagles are a better team, it puts you in a real bind, a real tough spot on deciding who to pick is going to win, because the Chiefs, everything says the Chiefs will win if it's close, but all of the advanced metrics, all of the statistics will tell you, and just looking at the personnel will tell you that the Eagles have a slightly better team.
Yep.
Yeah, and Cody, I would be curious your point of view on that. Well, first of all, let me say this. If you think it's going to be a close game and you think it's going to come down to key decisions and key plays, key throws in the fourth quarter, I'm not quite sure how or why you're betting on Sirianni and Hurts over Mahomes and Reed. Like there's not a lot of data to suggest that. But the other thing that I haven't gone back to every game, but that Eagles-Falcons, the drive Eagles-Falcons at the end of regulation, where Kirk Cousins went down the field in about 40 seconds, is seared into my brain. Jaden Daniels did it against the Eagles at the end of that game. It seems to me that Fangio's defense has some holes when they're going into protection mode at the end of games. And that, to me, feels like a really bad recipe when you're playing Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, it's basically just, it turns into soft zone. It's prevent defense and prevents you from winning a lot of times, especially in that sense, and then you get afraid to play. They play so much match. So you get afraid of playing match because it's like, well, one guy falls down or we open it up and then it's kind of that death knell, right? He's gone. And so you end up getting, we hear the term by commentators all the time, the umbrella coverage, which really isn't a thing. But in this point, it is, of where you're just kind of covering everything. It's deep, you're right. And that's something that if the Eagles keep this close, you have to be sweating it a little bit.
I can't believe that no insurance company has sponsored commentators saying umbrella coverage yet. It just occurred to me. I mean, they run commercials constantly during these games.
Al State Farm hadn't figured a way to do that. Yeah,
it's a missed opportunity. All right, here's what I want to do, fellas.
I know you want to move us on, but that in the game situation with the Falcons, the in the game situation with the Commanders, it would have been the same in the game situation with the Rams, and it would have ended their season. Like I think the Eagles defense is great. I was also thinking about the Panthers game, right? Where the Panthers drove down that field and should have won that game. Xavier Legette dropped the touchdown pass. So late in this game, I don't trust Jalen Hurts, but I'm also not sure I trust that Eagles defense in umbrella coverage.
Yeah, and I to your point, if there is one knock on the Fangio system, it's the blitz package, and that there really isn't a lot to mess with protections, do some different things, and so what you end up getting is a lot of vanilla stuff, simulated pressures. So you just end up just throwing into space.
All right, let's do this, fellas. That's a lot of analysis on both sides of the ball for both teams. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we'll get into some of the bets we like, because the Super Bowl is nothing if people aren't gambling on it. Some of the bets we like for this week, and then we'll all give our individual picks on the game and a score at the end. We'll get you out of here and get you ready for, I'll just say it, Super Bowl Sunday. You'll listen to the Matchup by Field Vision Sports. We'll be right back. Welcome back into the Matchup by Field Vision Sports. Excited to be with you, getting you ready for the big game this Sunday. And I got to tell you, fellas, the Super Bowl is nothing if not an opportunity for people to throw away their hard-earned money to casino owners. And so we're gonna give people our advice on that. First of all, is there? I didn't prepare you guys for this. If you don't have one, I'm okay with it. But is there like an off-the-wall prop that you find fun to bet on every Super Bowl, or that you've seen this Super Bowl that you think would be exciting? Scott, are you a big national anthem over under better?
I am not a big national anthem over under better, although I have heard that it's a place where if you get some insider knowledge, there is an edge to be had. What
You would know that.
And you and the listeners and my wife know that I like some action every now and again. No, I am not a meaningless, mindless prop better. I did hear that FanDuel is giving the heads tails coin flip at no juice, or maybe it's like minus 102, which means that if you consider every bet being 50-50, you might as well just put all your money on the coin flip and pick a side.
I mean, if there's no, you're basically throwing away your money if you're not betting on the coin flip. At least $500 on the coin flip.
Well, so let's bring in head of football operations, Cody Alexander. Cody, head or tails? Heads or tails for the coin flip?
I always like going heads. I know people say tails never fail, so I always like heads for the coin toss.
All right, I was listening to something on the radio a ways back where there was a study done.
Yes.
About it landing on the same side that was placed up when they flipped it. And it was something like over, it mattered like which thumb the guy flipped it with, but it was something like over thousands of incidences. It was like 52-48. I don't know which way. I don't know which way though. Yeah, I know.
I will take your study and up you one. Across the first 58 Super Bowls, the coin toss has landed on tails 30 times and heads 28 times.
Whew, I'm going tails. I think I'm going tails. The question is how much.
Seems like tails is sweet. The good thing is if you go on one side, if you go on tails and it hits, then you have that much more money to live line everything else and lose it later.
Here's what I'm thinking is 1/4 of Jets college fund. Because if you lose, I got like 14 years to build it back up.
And if you win,
that's a joke, everyone.
And if you win, he can go to school for 5 years instead of 4.
Right.
Which, if you know Jet, he undoubtedly will anyway. So,
all right, victory lap for Jet. I like it. Now that we got that out of the way and got Scott in hot water with his spouse, no doubt. Let's take a look at some of the recommendations we made in the app. I'll start with some of the player props. We've got Devontae Smith over receiving yards. And his current number is 52.5. And I'll say this other one while we have it so we can kind of discuss them together. AJ Brown under 70.5. The model likes Devontae Smith slightly over, AJ Brown slightly under. What are some things the Chiefs might do in coverage that could cause that?
Well, I mean, you just look at their two outside corners and what they've been able to do all year. That's going to limit. I think they're going to limit Brown. I think Spags, if you're thinking about it, there's two things he has to do. He has to slow down Saquon. You're not going to stop him, but you can slow him down. And then you're going to have to make sure that Brown doesn't beat you. And if you do that, I think you're going to be in pretty good spot.
Yeah, Sasha, you missed the best bets meeting this week, so I
did.
I think the way that we thought about this, and I think the best way to think about it now is the Eagles' offense in aggregate, and we thought about the Chiefs taking away AJ Brown, right? But also, as we talked about earlier, Spags being focused on the run, and so we stayed away from Saquon Barkley, right? Like mostly, not that he's not going to get his yards, but 113 against the Chiefs defense that I don't believe has given up a 100-yard rusher all season is a tall task. And so we kind of said, like, the Eagles are going to have to pass. We think Hurts is going to go over 213, but we think he gets it passing to Devontae Smith and potentially Goddard, with the Chiefs dedicating resources to AJ Brown.
You are correct. The Chiefs have not given up a 100-yard running back. Lamar Jackson went over 100 on him in week 1 from the quarterback position rushing, which you'll remember because we went 18-2 that week, and Lamar Jackson's over on rushing yards was one of the picks.
God, we were riding high week 1.
Riding our high horses all the way to the bank. Another interesting one, and this is kind of a spicy one that we don't oftentimes go to this well, but when you're trying to make 10 prop bets on the Super Bowl, you go to a lot of wells that you don't often go to. Mahomes over 29.5 rushing yards. We don't always go to the quarterback rushing yards because it's more of a high variance thing. But Mahomes seemingly, if the Chiefs win big games, when they win big games, always has back-breaking scrambles that are part of that. Add on to that the fact that you saw it last week against the Bills. The Chiefs will mix in a few designed runs for Mahomes the bigger the game is, and it doesn't get bigger than this weekend. I think the 29.5 for Mahomes makes a lot of sense to go over that number.
Yeah, I agree too. And especially since you don't really know who the running back is going to be, the featured back anyway, for the Chiefs offense. And I think that that's kind of been the story of their run game. It's not that they've abandoned it at all. It's kind of been inconsistent, and the engine to it in the playoffs has kind of been Mahomes' ability to kind of prolong drives or run the ball when they need it.
Yeah, it's the one thing you do have to be careful of with QB rushing yards is clock killing situations. If he has kneel downs at the end of the first half for whatever reason, or if they're killing the clock at the end of the game, a couple of kneel downs like right behind the line of scrimmage won't kill you. But if you get into a situation where like the game clock and the play clock are kind of synced up and he's trying to kill some time and losing 10 yards on a play.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That can be a problem.
Mahomes has been known to lose a lot of yards on his kneel downs. And I'd agree with you that I think rushing attempts, which I think his over under on rushing attempts is 5.5 yards. Not every sports book has that prop, and so we're trying to be friendly to all of our consumers here. I think 29.5 is a safe bet. Last year against the 49ers, he had 66 yards in the Super Bowl. And then 2 years ago against the Eagles on a bum ankle, I believe he was in the 40s. I think it was 43 for the game, but he had that one back-breaking 29-yard run on the drive that went down to seal it. So we know Mahomes is going to access his legs, especially against a secondary that's going to squeeze off his passing options. If they get pressure on him, which they will, he'll squeeze out, and he's going to use his legs more than he does in a regular game.
Yeah. So we have another prop that Vegas sometimes puts out that we don't like talk about in our app, but longest rush last week, Mahomes' longest rush prop was 12.5. He only had a 12-yard run against the Bills, so he did not hit it. It looks like his prop this week is 13.5. Do you think he has a rush of more than 13.5 yards?
I could see that, yeah. Especially against the
take it to the bank. Fourth quarter, maybe a 3rd and 1 play.
3rd and 1 picks up 14. All right, fair enough. Another prop that we looked at, and this isn't really a prop. This is a game pick, but we didn't really talk about this when we were doing the matchups at the beginning, so I want to discuss this. We're leaning on over 48.5. What about this matchup? Do we see that like it's more likely to be a high scoring game than a defensive struggle?
I think both these offenses are good. We mentioned it. I don't think that there's so much onus on the fact that, Hurts, right? He's going to have to pass the ball. But I do think that it's going to be almost next to impossible to completely stop Saquon Barkley. They're going to move the ball. They're going to score. On the other side, the Chiefs, look, they're built to play offense against a Fangio defense. So to me, I think that this is where you get the points. I think the point there, both of these teams are really good. Both these offenses are going to be able to score.
Yeah, I don't know if you I was trying to find the stat, but I don't know if you have seen this image floating around. Patrick Mahomes has played the number 1 defense in the playoffs. I think it's 4 or 5 times, and the Chiefs have averaged 37 points against those defenses. He's 8-0 against Fangio. I get it. These are different teams with different players and different schemes. But Mahomes, it's a Super Bowl. Mahomes is going to put up points. And I think you look to the other side of the ball, and this Chiefs defense is fine. I would argue it's better than the defense that played Philadelphia 2 years ago. Like, I think 38-35, which is what that game ended 2 years ago, is ambitious.
Yeah.
But you don't have to do that to get over 48.5 points, right? You got to get 30-27. You got to even get 27-24. And the reality is like this Chiefs defense isn't what it is last year. It's not as elite as it was last year. And Mahomes is going to put up points.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, wax poetic about Noah Gray going over 11.5 receiving yards.
Oh, dude. Not only is this my favorite prop of this Super Bowl, it's my favorite prop of every Super Bowl because the Chiefs go every year. And he will. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Gray might have this covered by the end of the first Chiefs drive. We already talked about it, but we expect the Eagles defense to be focused in on Travis Kelce. That doesn't mean the Chiefs stop throwing the ball to tight ends, right? And Noah Gray is a favorite target of Travis Kelce's, of Patrick Mahomes, especially when you put a lot of energy and resources towards defending Travis Kelce. And they often go to him early in the games too, before teams key in on it. So I kind of feel like 2nd and 8, midway through the Chiefs' first drive, you're getting like a 15-yard pass to Noah Gray. Cash, money, piece of cake.
Straight cash, homie.
And then you turn around and like put that on the length of the Kendricks halftime performance and lose it.
It always goes back to Vegas somehow. Put it on Noah Gray to score the next touchdown.
Or if you
Parlayed with
if you were
DeAndre
Sasha, you'd
with
put it
one
on a 3-person anytime touchdown parlay, even though it's virtually impossible to hit a 3-person anytime touchdown parlay.
Why is that so hard? You got to score 3 touchdowns by 3 different guys on the same team.
Yeah.
All right. Some other props that we came up with. I'm just going to run through them here. Jalen Hurts over 213.5 receiving yards. Hollywood Brown under 42.5 receiving yards. Juju Smith-Schuster over 16.5 receiving yards. And I'm just going to point this out. Nobody's perfect, but we do our model does like the Eagles to cover the 1.5, Eagles plus 1.5. So let's see if we agree with that. Let's fire up some picks for this game.
Can before we fire up some picks, I just need to make some corrections for the listeners. Hollywood Brown over 42.5.
Swear
it. Over. We expect Hollywood to get going a little bit. And Jalen Hurts 213 passing yards, not receiving yards. Although that would be impressive if Jalen Hurts got 213 receiving yards.
Moving receiver.
It would happen through the air either way. I swear I was looking at the app earlier and it said Hollywood under, so my mistake there. It was right on the borderline, by the way, on what the model thinks.
It's on the borderline. Maybe I'm misremembering. I think his line went up. I think his line went up. I think it started at 40.5. So maybe that tipped the scales.
Yeah. Check the app. Do something with Hollywood Brown. That's all we can recommend. I'm going to start with you, Cody. I want a brief synopsis of how this game's going to play out and a final score from you.
Yeah, I think that this is a Eagles offense, especially the running the ball. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. I think they're going to be able to score. I think Hurts is going to play pretty well. I do think the Chiefs are going to be able to score. I just think the Eagles are going to get one more stop than the Chiefs do, and I think it's a 27-24 game with the Eagles winning.
You sure about that?
I'm 100% sure. Anybody but the Chiefs.
I'll go next. I'll let Scott close us out. I mean, after all, he is the Lamar Hunt of Field Vision Sports. I'm calling my shot here, Cody. I'm sick of this ref talk. I'm sick of this anybody but the Chiefs talk. The Chiefs are cheaters. Mahomes is a baby. Whatever anybody wants to say, they just are beating everybody's asses all the time, and it's not even going to be close. It's not even going to be close. There's going to be no way to say it was the refs or it was the NFL script or whatever you want it to be. Chiefs 35, Eagles 24.
Okay.
All right.
Could have gone more aggressive, but I'll give them
that's ambitious.
2 possessions.
Aggressive. So to me, everyone's tired of seeing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, right? People are tired of the Chiefs. What I'm tired of is the exact same narrative every time the Chiefs get in the Super Bowl. So this is 5 straight times where it's like clearly the other team has a better roster. Clearly the other 52 players on the field are better for the other team, but the Chiefs have Mahomes, so we don't know what to do with it. But that was the story last year for the 49ers. That was the story 2 years ago for the Eagles. That was the story the first go around with the 49ers, right? I actually think the only Super Bowl the Chiefs have played in where people said they had a better roster was the one against Tampa Bay, which is the one that they lost. I don't believe there is as much of a difference in these rosters as people would lead you to believe. And the reality is, like, if you believe I've already said this a couple times, but if you believe it's going to be a close game, right? You have one team that's been historically dominant at close games with the all-time closer at quarterback and one of the best play callers that the game of football's ever seen. Just like, you actually can't overstate that. And you've got another that we don't trust. You've got another that we don't trust in Nick Sirianni, and a quarterback in Jalen Hurts who is great at what he does, but he is like the Eagles have not asked him to engineer drives late in games to win games, right? And I already talked about the fact that Fangio's defense is not really designed to hold up against 2-minute offenses, right? And so, like, if you're asking me where I'm putting my hard-earned money, like, you cannot convince me that if this is a close game with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter, that I should pick Jalen Hurts over Patrick Mahomes. And so, like, I got to go with the Chiefs. It's not me being a homer. It's just me seeing with my eyes what I've seen for the last 6 years. So give me 31-28 Chiefs. I think what happens is that the Eagles convert 4 drives into touchdown. Jake Elliott probably misses a field goal, and the Chiefs go down and win it. on the last possession.
Special teams.
Special
Always comes down to
Bud-
special teams.
Butker's not missing a field goal.
Well, you better knock on wood. I'm not saying that Butker could miss a field goal either, but Jake Elliott has been known to miss some field goals.
Yeah. Either way, we're going to be in for a treat on Sunday. Excited to see what the weekend has in store for us and see how the game plays out. It's been a fun season, fellas. It's the last time we'll talk before it's over. Any last words for the listening audience?
Enjoy it, man.
I'm fired up. Sasha and I believe, are gonna be down there. Sasha's making me drive, so maybe we'll put out some content and hit you all from the road. But it's gonna be an awesome game.
For Cody and Scott, I'm Sasha. Check us out at fieldvisionsports.com, on X at fieldvisionmi, Field Vision Sports on Instagram. You've been listening to The Matchup by Field Vision Sports. We'll see you next time.